Welcome back, everyone. Phoenix 3 here, and I guess this video is going to be a little different because a lot of people seem to be talking about the whole, how Smogon does the whole ban thing, and Mega Pidgeot is always a Pokemon that everyone goes back to because everyone agrees that that ban was complete bullshit. Even I agree with it. And I just want to talk about the experience that I had when I was actually going on the forums and trying to advocate as to why Mega Pidgeot shouldn't be banned at all. Um, Normally, well, I'm just going to start us off by saying that I do play Pokemon competitively. I play a bunch of different formats. And usually, when you play any competitive format in any game, it doesn't have to be Pokemon, it could be fighting games, first person shooters, anything that's competitive. You always want to prepare for the top threats of that format. If in Pokemon, if Mega Pidgeot is a threat against your team, then you obviously want to bring something to kind of alleviate the stress from that. In a fighting game, if you know everybody in the top 8 or top 16, for example, if everybody's using Lars and Tekken, then you're obviously going to prepare tech for Lars and Tekken, and you're expected to as a player because if you want to win, you got to prepare for those top threats. If Lars is a top threat, you're going to do everything you can to prepare for that character. In first-person shooters, if the best gun in the game is, I guess, at the time, the Vex Mythiclass from Destiny. If you know your opponents are going to be using that gun or the Thorn, then you're going to prepare for that gun. You're going to prepare defenses against it because everyone's using it. So since you know people are using it and you have that knowledge beforehand, you're going to take extra steps in preparing for that. And Pokemon is no different. When I was going into the Mega Pidgeot thread to kind of voice my opinion, since I exclusively use Mega Pidgeot as my Mega on my team, I kind of know the pitfalls for it. I know its strengths. I know its weaknesses. Um, I kind of know how to push its limit, even though if it doesn't pay off as much. And I went in so I could share that experience. And a lot of the things that I got were, you don't understand you're a bad player. You just cherry picked your calculations. Um, just a lot of stuff, and a lot of the people in the thread were really aggressive too. I think I ended up cussing two of them out in their private chat thing because they just pissed me off. I was like, wow, how can this community be so intolerant? Like when I say Smogon, I'm not talking about, you know, Smogon as the people behind it. I'm talking about Smogon as a community. So if I said Smogon wanted to do X, then I'm talking about the community, not Smogon. In a similar way to how when people say the government is taking away this freedom or giving too many rights to this one group, um, they usually say government as in a whole, the entirety of government, even though it might be that one specific sector of that government that is under scrutiny. So when I say Smogon, just treat it as the same way people say government and how they encompass everything government do, whether it's the police, medical, um, defense, just all of it. Just consider me saying Smogon as if people say the government for that example. So I went into the thread and I started listing my my concerns, my reasoning as to why Mega Pidgeot shouldn't be banned from UU. And I was posting some good stuff. I had said, well, there are a lot of things in UU that threaten Mega Pidgeot. For example, you have Mega Aerodactyl. I believe you have Chansey is another Pokemon, or Blissey is another Pokemon it doesn't want to see. There's just a list of Pokemon, Empoleon, things that resist it, and everything else. And they said, well, Mega Pidgeot has that chance to confuse them. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I was under the impression that Pidgeot's confusion chance wasn't the reason why it was being suspect tested. And I made sure to bring that up in all of my arguments. It's like, well, you guys said here that the confusion isn't the reason why it's potentially being banned. They say the reason it's potentially being banned is because it's fast, it's it hits hard, and it doesn't miss. And I had to go back in and tell them about that. I was like, well, Mega Aerodactyl is what, base 150 speed. It might be base. It's between 140 and 150 speed. It has 135 attack and its attack stat, same as Mega Pidgeot's special attack. So it has a max of 405 physical attack, which is good because its speed stat makes up for you not running a beneficial speed nature. I believe even if you do one run adamant max attack and max speed, you're still like almost pushing the 400 speed stat, which is still impressive for a Pokemon with 405 attack. Mega Aerodactyl is a whole lot bulkier than Mega Pidgeot by a lot actually. It has a really good move pool. People say Mega Aerodactyl isn't good because it can't use its Tough Claws ability, but it also has access to a lot of different things and like that. It also has what's that name of that attack? Hone Claws raises accuracy and attack, so its Stone Edge is pretty much going to always hit. Even when you go against Mega Pidgeot, there's always a guarantee that it will hit it. That checks it. Actually, that's a hard counter to Mega Pidgeot in my opinion. Even though there is a chance that Mega Pidgeot can hacks its way through, the chance is so low that it's almost non-existent. I mean, 30% chance of confusion is still good, and there's a 50% chance that they'll hit themselves. But a Mega Pidgeot's never going to hit a Aerodactyl first, unless you had like the really awkward set that I used that had agility. But then again, Mega Aerodactyl's defensive typing against flying is so strong against Mega Pidgeot that you don't want to stay in on it anyway. And another thing is how Smogon classifies counter and a check. Like they say a counter should be able to come in for free, almost for free, take a hit, and still be healthy enough to scare out whatever it's trying to hit. And a check is just a Pokemon that can take it out but can't switch in on it. And I mean that's just a bunch of bullshit in my opinion, if you ask me, because it seems like Smogon is trying to create a format to where if it doesn't happen exactly like this on paper, then this Pokemon is broken and needs to get banned. That's simply not the way I view the game. And I know Verlicify made a video about that as well, talking about how checks and counters are supposed to work, and that's a perfect example. Is that Pokemon is a game where nothing is ever going to go right. Attacks have maximum amount of damage they can do. Attacks have minimum amount of damage they can do. It might be a critical hit. It might burn you. It might paralyze you, which is probably the worst status in my opinion is paralysis because it just cripples you so much. But that's for another day. So I was basically listing all of my stuff for Mega Pidgeot and why it shouldn't be banned because I mean it's not as strong as other Megas. It's like yeah, Mega Pidgeot's only tool is the fact that it doesn't miss, and that tool can be used against it. It's not like Mega Lucario where it already has a really high attack stat behind an ability that boosts its attack. It doesn't have that. It's not like Mega Charizard where Tough Claws boosts its physical attacks or Drought increases its fire attacks. A lot of Megas have a lot of different tools that they can use. A lot of Megas have tools that they can use before they Mega, like Manectric has Intimidate before it. No, it has Volt Absorb before it Megas, and it has Intimidate after it Megas. So it has a way to influence the physical attack stats of Pokemon while still having defensive options against electric types before it Megas. It also even has a really high speed stat. I think it's like 402 max or something like that, but that's still really good. And when I brought in all the stuff that could switch in on Mega Pidgeot and counter it outright, they said, well, no, that doesn't work that way. Like I had told them that, you know, if you want to take the risk and switch in your Mega Aerodactyl and Mega Pidgeot to take the Hurricane, then there's a 70% chance that you're not going to get confused. You know, it's the same percent chance that you'll take a burn with Scald, for example. And it was like, well, you know, it's the fact that Mega Pidgeot can bullshit its way around its checks and counters. It's like, well, I mean, if all else fails and I have no other option, then yeah, I'm gonna roll the dice with Hurricane and see what happens if I'm faster than him. And you guys seen me do that on this channel in my videos, where sometimes there's just no other option, and I just roll the dice with Hurricane and see what happens, and then I'll either get it and I bullshit my way out of that situation, or I don't get it and I lose. And that's kind of the way that Mega Pidgeot is. That's its gamble for the most part. It's the one thing that it does, and they're saying, hey, this one thing that this Pokemon does is too good, so we got to get rid of it. Like the way that I look at it is, Pidgeot has to run max speed because its speed tier is so awkward to where if you're not running max speed, then you get outsped by base 109, I believe it is 108 or 109. Base speed Pokemon outspeed you, and that's a speed tier that you don't want to gamble with. So you sacrifice Mega Pidgeot's 405 special attack, and you put like 370 something, 369, I think think it is. It might be 389, but yeah, I think it's 389. But you sacrifice Mega Pidgeot's attack stat so you can run max speed. And I said that was one of the problems that plague Mega Pidgeot is in UU. I consider UU the choice Scarf tier. Everything is running Scarf. Anything Mega Pidgeot will outspeed anything with a Scarf that's max speed up to like base 62 in their base speed stat. I think anything higher than that, and they outspeed Mega Pidgeot. So you're running max speed, and they can still outspeed you at base 62 Scarf. So that's gonna be things like Magnezone. I don't think Magnezone is UU, but I'm just saying that as an example that you will outspeed for sure anything that's base 61 with a Scarf. So you have things like Emboar with Wild Charge that kills you in a single hit. You have Mega Aerodactyl, which is just a whole lot faster than it. You have Mega Beedrill, that's just a whole lot faster than it. Even if you wanted to play, I feel like I got something crawling on my arm here. There was something crawling on my arm. But even if you wanted to, um, I gotta find that. There's a bug. I don't know what it was. It didn't look like it was a spider, so I'm not even gonna care. But there's a lot of stuff in UU that outright handles Mega Pidgeot. You have Goodra, or the Assault Vest Goodra, that can just eat up hits for days. I actually had a game with one where I had to hit it with Hurricane like 7 or 8 times before I could bring it down, and it was confused because it switched in, and the damage was good enough to where I wanted to stay in because I had already known the entire Gudra's moveset, so I could take any one hit it wanted to do to me. So I just kind of wanted to play with the dice a little bit. And you got Empoleon, you got Chansey or Blissey, like I said, and they said, well, you know, nobody should have to have a Pokemon in the team just to counter one, which is my whole argument against Stealth Rocks, by the way, that they completely dismissed, but it's perfectly fine here. And I had told them, it's like, well, even if Mega Pidgeot wasn't in the tier, then it's not like people wouldn't use Empoleon. Empoleon has really good typing. It's not like people wouldn't use Chance or Blissey because Blissey is just a sponge when it comes to special hits. It's not like people wouldn't use Goodra. These are Pokemon people have been using before Mega Pidgeot was even a problem. And now you're saying people have to have these Pokemon on their team because of Mega Pidgeot. Well, that's not the case because they were already using these. And now that Mega Pidgeot isn't in the tier anymore, people are still using these Pokemon. So they just pretty much banned a Pokemon for no good reason. So when I was just reading through the entire list, they had already had their mind made up that Mega Pidgeot was getting banned. So the suspect test was completely redundant. Like I had even told them, it's like, well, if Mega Pidgeot is a threat, why don't you modify your Blissey that you're using? You know, Serene Grace Blissey with Thunder has a 60% chance to paralyze anything. You know, a Mega Pidgeot's not going to risk setting up on that because if it does get paralyzed, it dies to the following thunder. It's not going to be fast enough to get that refresh off, and even if it is fast enough to get the refresh off, it still has that same 60% chance to get paralyzed to a move that it's weak to. And a thunder against a Mega Pidgeot from anything is going to be really strong against it. And Blissey doesn't have the lowest special attack. I think it's like even uninvested is like 207 or something like that. Like it's pretty much a Cresselia with more bulk. And they was like, well, but why should you have to do that? It's like, well, I mean, that's just what you have to do if you're going to prepare for potential top threats. You just don't sit here and say, I'm just going to complain because my team can't beat this Pokemon, so we have to get it banned. It's like, I can understand if Mega Pidgeot had no options at beating it at all. Like it was just it came in and it just shit all over the tier. Then I could understand that. It's like, yeah, maybe we should look at Mega Pidgeot and ban it, but Mega Pidgeot has a hard time in UU. I mean, it's got to worry about Heat Rotom, it's got to worry about Beedrill, it's got to worry about Aerodactyl, it's got to, I mean, it has to worry about a bunch of stuff. And then I had said, it was like, well, if you want to really, do well against it or beat it outright, I mean, you could always use a Jolteon. And there's like, well, Jolteon's not UU. I was like, well, what does that matter? I mean, you can use a Jolteon in UU. Base 130 speed is still really good. Jolteon has a lot of attack. A Pidgeot's not going to want to stay in against a Jolteon. The reason I use Jolteon in UU is because I can't use Zapdos in UU. I mean, now you can use Zapdos in UU. It got bumped down. But at the time, Zapdos is still OU. And I like to have lightning types on my team. So Jolteon was my option because I like Jolteon more than any other lightning type out there that I could use in that tier. And it just happened to have the added benefit of beating Mega Pidgeot, which was good. So it's not like I was using a Jolteon just to beat Mega Pidgeot. It was just something that it happened to do because I wanted a fast lightning type on my team. I always want to have a fast lightning type on my team. And his whole thing was like, well, Jolteon's not UU, it's RU, and we're trying to fix the RU tier. I was like, well, we're trying to fix the UU tier. And I was like, see, that's the problem with tiers, is that people were so obsessed with their absolutes that they have to be able to ban a Pokemon so they can play in their specific tier. Like you have people in OU who only use OU Pokemon. Just like you have people in UU who only use UU Pokemon and they don't use anything else other than that. They don't look at anything else as an option because to them that isn't an option. If I have an option to use a Pokemon in a lower tier, then I'm going to do it because it works for me. Jolteon's not a bad Pokemon. Jolteon's a really good Pokemon. So why don't you want to use it as a viable option at stopping a potential, top threat in a tier? And I don't understand the reasoning behind that. They tell me that, well, if you want to beat a Heatran, then put a Pokemon in your team with Earthquake. It's like, well, none of the Pokemon that I use learn Earthquake. So that's the problem. Why don't we ban Heatran since its typing is so good? Oh, well, if you want to, play in this tier, then you have to prepare for the top threats of it. It's like, so is it okay to do these things and not do it for something else? Like, that's that whole subjective mentality that I just don't like about Smogon. Because I mean, they want to have a competitive environment, but don't want to treat it as if it's a competitive environment. And I simply don't understand that. Like, Smogon created a format to where flying types, ice types, bug types, and oh, did I say fire already? Flying, ice, bug, and fire. Like these four types aren't usable competitively. A lot of the Pokemon who learn those attacks are really good, but the actual type isn't used as widely as much as things like ground or rock, for example. So the flying type is interesting because the flying type is usually encompassed of just pretty much birds learning flying type moves that are offensive in any kind of respect. So since nobody is already using these type of Pokemon to begin with because they don't want to take the 25 or 50% damage from Stealth Rock or have to babysit a flying type Pokemon the entire game, people just don't use these Pokemon. which in turn means Smogon doesn't have to prepare for a Mega Pidgeot, for example. If their team happens to have a Rotom on it, then yeah, they can switch in on it. But most teams aren't prepared to deal with flying type Pokemon, especially when they're attacking flying types using flying type stabs. A lot of teams aren't prepared for that because nobody uses those Pokemon, so why should they prepare for something that they don't want to use? And that's the whole problem that we're seeing here. Stealth Rock is a byproduct of all of these things getting banned because they completely remove something from the game. And since nobody uses it, they don't prepare for it. But when a select few people use it and they realize, hey, this Pokemon is really strong against my team, we need to do something about it. And then they put up the suspect test. Like they already had in the back of their mind that Pidgeot was going to get banned. Smogon doesn't like Pidgeot. They just don't. Smogon doesn't like Megas, period, but they just don't like Pidgeot. They don't like the fact that its flying stab is good against their teams. Like they straight up said, well, removing Mega Pidgeot from the format increased the viability of grass and fighting types, and it naturally would do that. So they basically are removing the flying type in general from UU. Mega Pidgeot is, and I'm not going to lie, this is the strongest flying type user in UU. They just completely removed it from the game, which warps the tier even more. Mega Pidgeot already wasn't seeing usage because of how Stealth Rocks affected it. Because people weren't using it, people didn't see the need to prepare for it. But now they just completely removed Mega Pidgeot from the tier altogether, which effectively makes the entire tier um, uncheckable, I guess, towards grass and fighting types. Like when you go to UU, you see a lot of people using Mega Venusaur. Why are people using Mega Venusaur? Well, because nobody's using Mega Pidgeot to check it. Nobody's using Talonflame to check it. I mean, you still got people that do use these Pokemon, and Mega Venusaur has a hard time dealing with those Pokemon. But because people don't use those types in particular because of Stealth Rocks, they don't see the need to prepare for it, which means they can use other options that they wouldn't normally use if they had to worry about Mega Pidgeot. Nobody will be willing to use a slower grass type against a tier that could potentially, wreck them with fast flying types. And that's what Smogon has done. So when I was reading the thread that they was going on, people were accusing me of cherry picking and everything else, and I was using examples from battles that I had in UU. It's like every Florges that I ran into, my Hurricane was doing 27% to. After leftovers, it was a 5 or 6 hit KO, and that is if I didn't get it. But when they Moonblast me in return, that Moonblast was doing like 37, 42%. So it wasn't viable for me to stay in with Mega Pidgeot, especially considering there's a 30% chance that my special attack would drop, making my attacks do even less damage. And they had said, well, what Florges do you know runs max special defense and this? I was like, well, apparently everyone that I ran into was running that. I don't use Florges, so I don't know the spreads, but I know what I was running into, and I was getting 27, 30% consistently with my Hurricane. And this here is running my max attack Pidgeot because this, or my max special attack Pidgeot because this one has Hurricane on it, just so I could deal with Beedrill. And I was getting like 27, 30% with it. And I was using that as an example, showing the calcs. And they was like, you don't know the tier, you're just a bad player. You need to get off of Pokemon Showdown. You need to not play the game because you don't understand what you're talking about. And I'm like, I'm providing you with calcs from games that I've actually had. I even had some replays that showed examples of what I was going to. And I had the one replay that I posted. It was like, well, see, and this one opponent here, you were able to bullshit your way around that Pokemon because it switched in, got confused, and it hit itself, which allowed your Mega Pidgeot to knock it out. I was like, yeah, but that was like one in what, 15 games? It's like, yeah, luck happens sometimes. Sometimes my opponent switches in a Mega Charizard X on my Zapdos' Thunderbolt, it gets paralyzed. It's a 1 in 10 chance that it'll happen, but 90% of the time I lose that exchange because I can't do a damn thing about the Dragon Dance. The paralysis means he can't Dragon Dance on me, which is good because that's his win condition. If my win condition at the time, my only win condition is try to confuse you and you hit yourself, then of course I'm going to go for that because that's my only out at that time. I could throw a bunch of Pokemon at you and try to knock it down, but why should I have to do that? And another thing that they said, they was like, oh well, Mega Pidgeot also is really powerful against Stall. You know, it can set up on Stall and beat him with the Hurricane Roost Refresh workup set. And I had told him, I was like, I mean, that's in how many games? Even against Stall, is not even guaranteed. If Stall really wanted to, sway their matchup against um, Mega Pidgeot, they just throw Thunder on Blissey and be done with it. I mean, that's an option that they have, but they don't want to use that option because they're so. Smogon says I have to run Blissey like this. Smogon says I have to run this Pokemon like this. Why would I want to use Serene Grace Thunder on a Pokemon that's faster than me? Why would I want to do that? I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. I would run Serene Grace on a Blissey with Thunder and solve a lot of my problems. It's like, yeah, I'm not hitting things like Garchomp or whatever. But I mean, Blissey learns Ice Beam. And if Garchomp's a threat against your Blissey, then you're going to put Ice Beam on it and be done with it because that's a chance that you have to win that exchange if they overpredict. And they was just extremely nasty, like towards me at all. And I was saying the same things to some other people. And I had said, it's like, look, I can tell just by based on what you guys are saying that none of you have ever used a Mega Pidgeot before. If you used it even at half as much as that I use it, you will see that the stuff that you're saying isn't fair at all. Some guy even admitted I've never used a Mega Pidgeot before. It's like, well, you shouldn't be allowed to even have an opinion until you've used a Pokemon before. And that's the reason why I don't vote in a lot of their suspect tests because I don't use that Pokemon. So I can't sit here and say that I actually know what it is that they're talking about because I simply do not know. I don't use that Pokemon. But Mega Pidgeot is a Pokemon that I do use. And the stuff that they were saying about it, I'm simply not seeing because I use it. It's like, yeah, there's a situation every once in a while where I confuse them and they hit themselves. It's like, yeah, that's great for me. That's what I want to see. But I don't click Hurricane expecting that. I click Hurricane because it's the best option Pidgeot has with its ability. Even if I were to take Hurricane out and go purely with Air Slash, they'll find a way to complain about that. Oh well, Mega Pidgeot has a 30% chance to flinch you, and then its ability takes away the need to for that 5% chance that it's like they'll come up with some other excuse as to why they needed to ban it. It's like, well, Mega Pidgeot's speed is too high. It's like, well, there are a lot of things in UU that outspeed it naturally. There are a lot of things you can use in RU that outspeed it naturally. There are a lot of things that outspeed it with Scarf. And I had told him, I was like, Mega Pidgeot's speed isn't that good when you compare it to other top threats in UU. And they was like, oh my god, you don't know the tier because Mega Pidgeot's base 121 speed is a really good speed tier. And I'm like, well, no, it's not because first of all, it's only base 101 before it megas. Aerodactyl is faster than Mega Pidgeot before it megas. Regular Aerodactyl's base speed is 130. So it's going to hit Pidgeot first before it gets a chance to do anything unless you use Protect. But even then, a Protect Mega is still going to be slower than just regular Aerodactyl. So I had to make sure to bring that up. It's like, well, Mega Pidgeot is like, and I had to say, it's like, yes, its speed is good. It outspeeds a lot of things that are base 110. But, it's not outspeeding things like Jolteon. It's not outspeeding any form of Aerodactyl. It's not outspeeding Mega Beedrill. It's not outspeeding things you need it to because its speed is so awkward. If it was like base 145, 150 speed, which I think it should be, then it'll be different because Mega Pidgeot has the power or has the speed to back up its power, and then I could maybe want to understand that a little bit more. But Mega Pidgeot doesn't do anything. Like Mega Pidgeot hits as hard as a Mega Manetrix Thunderbolt, for example. Like that's what it does. Like Mega Pidgeot doesn't have an ability that increases its damage output. It just makes it to where everything used by it or against it doesn't miss. And that's simply not a fair trade-off when you compare it to other Megas that got more tools when they Mega Evolve to increase their damage output, something Pidgeot doesn't have. So Pidgeot is hitting you with just its raw attack stat, and that's it. It's like, yeah, it's good because flying is a good attack type, especially in a meta where nobody sees a need to prepare for said attack type. And just the entire time of just going back and forth with the people, and I got people calling me a scrub, I got people calling me, just being extremely nasty about it, and I'm like, well, I've got games that show, you know, everything, and I showed all my games. I didn't just show any one. It's like, I showed the ones where Mega Pidgeot put in work, and I showed the ones where it didn't put in work. All the replays everybody else were posting were just replays like, see, here's an example of Mega Pidgeot 6-0ing stall. Here's an example of Mega Pidgeot confusing the Pokemon that switched in is supposed to check it. And I was like, see, but that's not fair to make a comparison like that because that's not how games happen all the time. The refresh workup set, I couldn't ever get that set to work because Mega Pidgeot is just not bulky enough to take hits to try to get refresh off. Even when I was able to get a refresh off, or not a refresh, a workup. Even when I was able to get a workup off, my opponent switched into something that would force Mega Pidgeot out. So it's like instead of taking the turn clicking Hurricane, which would have at least put some damage on that counter or check that switched in, I clicked Workup, a Rotom switched in, or something switched in, and I had to immediately switch back out because I'm not going to want to take a Thunderbolt from a Rotom. It might paralyze me. It could do a number of things, and that's just simply not worth the risk. It's like, yeah, if my opponent wants to leave in a Blissey and that Blissey doesn't have status or a way to inflict status on me, then I'm going to click work up a couple of times just because my opponent is letting me do that. But on any competent player who is going to switch in something that counters it, they're simply going to find a way to counter that. And I also question the skill levels of the opponents that got set up on by Mega Pidgeot. It's like, yeah, nobody wants to take a +1 anything from any Pokemon, but when there are ways out there that a player could potentially try to stop it, then they could try to stop it. It's like, yeah, if a Mega Aerodactyl switches in and doesn't get confused, it takes 36% from a Hurricane, and that Pidgeot is going to switch right out. You could roost. I mean, you could do anything, but people are so set in their ways of what it is that they're going to play on their teams that they don't want to try any other strategy because it hasn't been shown that it was able to work. It's a number of things that people aren't really willing to try. And I mean, and this here goes, beyond just the Mega Pidgeot ban, but any other Pokemon. Like, look at, for example, Mega Lucario. Mega Lucario got banned because of its unpredictability and its adaptability, making its stab attacks double in power for the most part. And I simply don't see that as a problem, but they banned it because they didn't want to deal with an unpredictable Pokemon. At least with Lucario, you're going to deal with a Mega Lucario, and I don't see anything wrong with that. But then when I use the same logic on them with Mega Charizard X and Mega Charizard Y, they were like, oh, well, it's easy to predict them. I was like, well, no, it's not, because it could be one of two Megas which completely play different than one another. If your opponent sends in Charizard and you guess right that it is a Mega Charizard Y and you prepare for Mega Charizard Y, then great. But if you call it wrong and it's a Charizard X, then you're going to get set up on and you're going to get swept. Or if you call it wrong and think it's a Charizard X and it turns out to be a Charizard Y and it uses a Fire Blast, then you're probably going to die from it just because you thought it was something else that was completely different. So I just don't understand their banning criteria. It's like they keep Pokemon around that they like, and they ban Pokemon that are a threat to the Pokemon that they like. Like the Landorus I getting banned instead of Landorus T, in my opinion. They say, usage isn't, you know, how Pokemon gets banned. Its effect on the meta. It's like, well, you made an entire meta where rock and steel types are favored. You made a meta where, you know, those specific type of Pokemon are the ones people want to use because they take the least amount of damage from stealth rocks, or they're strong against everything else. So people found a way around that because you wanted to create a meta where you want to favor a certain type of Pokemon. So now you remove that Pokemon from the meta because it affects the Pokemon you were trying to build the meta around, and that's a problem for them, obviously. So they got to get rid of the Pokemon so they can keep their meta. Instead of taking the time waiting for the meta to grow and change and see what is actually a problem, they was like, oh nope, this beats my Pokemon, so we got to get rid of it. And then on top of that, not anybody can vote, which is a problem with the system. They want like 10% of the players to actually participate in banning a Pokemon. So it affects everybody, even the other 90% of players who can't vote because they didn't meet the requirements. So I don't know. That was just my experience with their voting system, how they do things. It was basically little kids on the playground calling each other names and everything else. Like that's just the main reason I don't like Smogon. Like Smogon could have a good meta, but they're not willing to put in the work required to maintain said meta. Like when I make my arguments for stealth rocks, they say, well, if we ban stealth rocks, we have to completely retest everything to check the effects of the meta. And I'm like, well, that's your job to do that. If you're going to maintain a meta and say you have the most balanced meta game ever, then I expect you to have some kind of integrity and maintain that. That's something I would do. But they don't want to do the work because why should they? So, I mean, that's all I got from here. I guess, I'm speaking in this video as an avid Pidgeot user, and the people who banned Mega Pidgeot obviously didn't use it. And the bans were, or the votes were extremely decisive. Like it was, and this is something that I haven't ever seen before. But the um the way the people were, everybody who used Mega Pidgeot didn't want it banned, but everybody who didn't use Mega Pidgeot wanted it banned. So if that doesn't say something right there, then I don't know what will. But that's all I got for this video here, and I hope you guys enjoyed this 38-minute video. Oh my God, it's 38 minutes. But if you guys like this video, then like it. I know a lot of people aren't because a lot of people really swear by Smogon, and I respect that. And they'll probably dislike it. It's just if you do dislike it, tell me so I at least know who I'm dealing with. And be sure to subscribe to my channel because I'm always going to be doing more videos like this. And as always, I want to thank you guys for watching my videos and hope to see you all in the next one.